Hey there, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini. If you follow my work, maybe you're familiar with the Bag of the Month clubs that I've launched in the past year. We've done 2 different clubs and they each ran for 5 months. That means that 10 different handbags were taught in step-by-step, high-definition video lessons. Now they're all available. If maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it, they're all available for sale in my online shop. But I wanted to make this video to let you know what the next step is. And so creating these different bags that we made, I designed everything from mini backpacks like this that are great for kids and adults. I use mine every day. And then things like messenger bags that have different compartments for our laptop. And so in the past 10 bags of these clubs, we've done everything from different types of shoulder straps, handles, hardware, rivets, grommets. We've done all kinds of stuff. And so I've been thinking, like, what is the next step and what else do I want to teach you that's both fun, cute, of course, because we love to work with beautiful fabrics, and also functional. If you're familiar with this type of projects that I like to do, I have to be able to use it, right? Whether it's a quilt, a bag, a purse, clothes, I need to use it. And so I've been thinking about what that next step is. And I'm so excited because I am in the works of working out all the details to bring you a brand new Wallet of the Month club. Now in this tutorial, I'm actually going to walk you through 3 different ways that you can prepare your fabric strips to create credit card slots in a variety of wallet patterns. Now in this new club, I'm featuring all different kinds of things and I'm working out the details to focus on more intermediate and advanced steps that any beginner can still do because I'm walking you through with step-by-step video lessons. And so I thought I'd start it off kind of by telling you a little bit about my teaching style for those that maybe are not familiar with it. Now, I recently opened up a sewing studio in my hometown here of Gainesville, Florida, and I've been teaching more in-person classes, which is how I started 10 years ago with teaching sewing and quilting. And I've realized that I really do have a knack for teaching a variety of learners. We all hear about visual learners, learners that need to do it to get it and to understand it. And I think I really have this really interesting and unique understanding for a variety of learning techniques or learning styles, I would say. So for me as a teacher, I've noticed that if I have a class of 6 or 8 students, I may explain a step in one way and maybe 2 or 3 people will pick it up like this, and then the rest of the room is looking like I didn't understand that. So I'll explain it in a slightly different way. And then I see that maybe 2 or 3 more people then have the light bulb moment like, oh, now I get it. So by now I have a little bit more than half of the class comfortably starting their project or working on the steps that I've covered. And then I'll spend more time with whoever else didn't get it, trying to kind of teach it in another way until I have everybody covered. So instead of kind of alienating some students that maybe don't catch it in the first way that I explained it, I really do like to make sure that everybody is covered, right? That everybody understands. And I think that's really what I have to credit my success to is my instructional style. It's flexible, I'm kind of resourceful, and I can grab from different things and try to put myself in the students' shoes so that I can then teach it in a way that I think they'll better understand it. So that is what I'm all about, and that is what my video tutorials and online courses are about. For the past 10 years, I've been teaching millions of people all around the world with my instructional video tutorials, which I kind of find interesting that even though I've been teaching for over a decade now, I'm still very much able to put myself in the beginner's shoes. So whether you're beginner, intermediate, or more advanced, I think that you'll really take to my teaching style in any of my online video courses or tutorials. So keeping with that theme of teaching different students slightly different ways, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can prep fabric strips to create these really fun credit card slots in any wallet or kind of small little pouch type project that you're working on. All right, here are the 3 sample chunks of fabric that we're going to be working with to show you the 3 different ways to prep strips of fabric for the credit card slots. This would be 1 credit card slot, this one's going to be for 1, and this one is actually going to be folded in half, and it's going to be enough for 2. So they always end up being about the same depending on the design of the wallet. If it's a larger one that has more slots, it's going to look probably something like this. And you can see that in this one, I actually have 3 rows and then 3 in each. Okay, so 3 times 3 is 9. There's 9 credit card slots on this side of the wallet and 9 credit card slots on this side of the wallet. So depending on the overall design, you obviously following the pattern that you're using, it's going to have you prep it in a few different ways. Now, one way you can do it is like this, where it's folded in half, because the idea is that you don't want to see any raw edges sticking out at the top of your wallet here, or the credit card slot, excuse me. So if I tip this back, you can see that it has fabric on the inside as well. So basically each credit card slot is lined. So to get that look, this is what you're going to do here. Now most wallet patterns out there are going to require you to have the fabric and then also woven fusible interfacing. So I'll show you how I use it. This is a really light woven interfacing that has a scratchy side on one side that feels a little scratchy because they're really like tiny little dots of adhesive that are on it. And then on the other side, it's smoother because it just feels like a thin muslin or like a thin fabric. So what I like to do is not actually cut this to the size, but instead I cut the fabric based on the pattern, and I lay it so that the ugly side of my fabric is touching the scratchy side or the adhesive side. And then I will lay it on top, and then I'll cut around it. And that way I know that I'm cutting just what I need to match up with the fabric piece, because the next step is to fuse it together. So once I have this here, it's already ready to go because the adhesive is already facing the back or the wrong side of my fabric. So then you can take your hot iron and obviously read the manufacturer's instructions for the interfacing you're using, and then you're just going to fuse it into place. This just gives a little bit more of a crisper hand to the fabric and gives it some more stability. Now this is also going to depend on the pattern and the design of the bag. If it's something that has a lot of bulk in the seams, then you may want to leave out the interfacing if you are going to be using this folded technique, because each credit card slot is then going to be doubled of fabric. If we add the interfacing, there's going to be 4 layers like this, right? We have fabric, interfacing, interfacing, and fabric. So if you're working on something that you don't want to be quite as bulky, keep that in mind, and then omit the interfacing, but use the folded technique, okay, to double up on that fabric, and that way each one of your credit card slots is going to be lined. Then usually you'll top stitch here to kind of give it that nice decorative finish to the top of your credit card slots. Like you see this line of stitching right across here, and that will hold both the fold down and give it the top stitching look. And you would get something like that in your project. Then obviously you would stitch down the center here to split it so that you don't just have one large credit card slot to have things sliding around. Instead, you'll split it up so you have 2 rows of credit card slots that each card can fit in like this. Okay, so that's the first technique, where each credit card slot is lined because it's folded in half. So that's the first one. The next one, we're going to be working with individual card slots like this. And again, because this is such a flimsy little piece of cotton, we're going to back it with the fusible interfacing. Now here's another tip when you're using fusible interfacings, and this is going to apply to most all your projects, regardless if it's a wallet or a bag or even on garment fabrics, okay? When you hit it with the iron, you're melting by heating basically the adhesive that was on the back of that interfacing that's now stuck to the fabric. So you're heating it up, the adhesive is melting, and that's what's sticking it and gluing it to the fabric. Now if you start to handle this too much, you're not allowing the adhesive to resettle by cooling itself down to stay adhered to the fabric. So if you start moving it, you can really pull it apart if it's reheated because it's still in that melted state. So that's a tip to use both for you and against you. I like to let it cool after I press it so that I know I won't get any puckers, and I know that it won't start peeling apart before it's had time to set and cool. If you do fuse your fabric to some type of adhesive and you find that you have a bubble in the back or something, in order to fix it, reheat it, and as it's warm, go ahead and peel the adhesive or the interfacing back, and then smooth it and reheat it down. So it can work for you either way. Just know that when it's hot, that adhesive is still kind of in that melted state. When you let it cool, it will then cool and obviously harden back up, and that's what keeps it stuck to the fabric. So notice what I did here. I stuck the fabric on and fused it down. I put the pieces as close as I could to avoid getting the adhesive from the interfacing on my iron, and then I'll go back in here and slice it down the middle. That's just another way of doing things, and y'all know that that is how I like to teach. So then when we have these two different ones, let's go over the next two techniques. Obviously, this does not feature a folded method like I just showed, but it does have a second layer that's made it a little bit stiffer than what it was just as the fabric. So the first one I'm going to show you is by using the zigzag capability on your machine. We want to finish these raw edges first, and that's what we're going to do at the sewing machine. All right, for the second technique, if you are working on credit card slots, you don't have a serger, and you're not using that folded technique, you can use just individual pieces like this, but we want to finish off the raw edge first because we don't want this stuff fraying on us, especially if you have to like wash it a little bit or over time with wear and tear of the project. So the first step for me is to select, I have a computerized sewing machine here, and I'm selecting a zigzag stitch. It may be helpful to use, to try it out on a scrap piece of fabric until you determine the width and the length of the zigzag stitch that you want. I typically like to have something that's a little bit narrower and closer together so there's less fraying in between the stitches. So I think I'm going to, let's see, zigzag stitch. I'm going to set the stitch length at about a 1.4 and the stitch width on mine to a 3.5 or 3.4, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to get really close to the edge, and I want to zigzag super close. You can send the zig and the zag like right off the edge. Some machines will even have what they call overcast or like faux serger stitches, where it goes that across the edge and then zigzags in. Whichever one of the finishing zigzag type of stitches you can use, that would be fine for this application here, okay? Definitely if you have different decorative stitches on your machine, open up your user manual and stitch some out, okay? I'm just stitching straight down one of the long sides here. And I'm using a darker thread so you can see better. Okay, and you can see how it's zigzag stitched the whole edge. Then you're going to turn it over and repeat that to the other long side as well. Okay, so here it is. Next step is to grab some glue, and you want to make sure that you're using some type of fabric safe and sewing machine safe fabric glue. And another little tip here, when you're doing the zigzag stitch or using an overcast stitch on your machine to finish off the two long sides, make sure that the zigzag is not coming too far in, because we still need to account for a 1/4 inch to flip this back. Do you see how that works? And so if my zigzag was super big, like 7.0 millimeters, or if your machine goes bigger than that, you don't want to run the risk of, after folding it back, seeing those stitches on the pretty side of the fabric, if that makes sense. And I'll show you here an example. Here's one that has 4 different little credit card slots, all right? And this has been finished actually with the next technique I'll show you with the serger, but the same idea goes. You don't want the stitches, whether you're serging or zigzagging, to be bigger than the 1/4 inch that you need to fold that down. So do you see how neatly that looks from the front side? And I even used a really light gray thread on this red, and as long as you're consistent with straight line stitching, it's going to turn out really nicely, and you don't have to run the risk of having little threads sticking out. The same thing is going to go for this technique. So let's try it with the zigzag stitches. We're here at the top. I'm grabbing my glue, and I'm just going to run some glue on the wrong side, all right, like that. Get my ironing board, and I'm going to turn it under about a 1/4 inch. Doesn't have to be super perfect. You can measure if you'd like, but as long as you're consistent, you should get a nice, even, straight edge across the top of your credit card slot. So do you see how that sets it? And now when we turn it this way, nice and neat. So now we can go back on the sewing machine and top stitch straight across this top to further secure that folded edge. Okay, so obviously I'm using dark thread here so you can see it, but this would be the top stitching and some neutral thread that would blend in with your fabric. And then on the back side, it's a 1/4 inch, the edge is finished, it's been folded down and top stitched into place. So the glue was for basting it, to hold it in place for us to then go back and top stitch an even line across. So that's the second technique. We've done the folded one, we've done on the sewing machine with a zigzag stitch, and now let's do the third one, where we're going to head over to the serger. All right, so at the serger, I've set up my machine to just a 3 thread, and that way it's going to be a little bit narrower. I don't have that 4th needle thread, making this finishing edge or serger stitch on the edge wider than I need it to be, because remember, we still got to turn it down 1/4 of an inch. So whatever stitch you're doing here needs to be less than 1/4 of an inch so it doesn't show up at the top. It's the same idea with the zigzag stitch that we just went over, but it's just going to be done on a serger. So make sure that it's narrow, make sure that you use your user manual and kind of adjust the settings to exactly what you want it to be. And then the key thing with the serger is that it does have a blade. So if you don't line it up correctly or you move your fabric, it's going to cut into the width here. So depending on your pattern, it's going to tell you cut this to a specific size. You don't really want to start cutting into it and shortening it, because then the finished credit card slot for that wallet or project is not going to finish at what the designer designed it to be. So instead, what I like to do is I just shave off like 1 thread of the actual top, just so that that cleans off the edge in case there's any crooked lines from my previous cutting or from fusing the interfacing, and that will allow a cleaner serger stitch along the edge of it. So here we go. And now with the serger, remember, we're zigzagging like how we did the zigzag on the last one. We did both long edges of the credit card slot. We're going to do the same thing for this one. So what I do is I still hold on to it, and there's going to be a chain of thread still on it. I serge while I still keep pulling, so I end up with this longer tail. And once it's long enough that you can swing around here, my blade is right here. So I'm just going to swing it under the presser foot, press the foot pedal, and swing it through there so that then the blade can cut it off. Like that. Then I'll bring it back and do the same thing on the opposite long edge. And again, bring it around and cut. So this is what you get. 2 clean finished edges, the both long edges, and then you have the little tails that end up at the end of every serger stitch that you use the machine for. So I'm just going to trim this off, and then we'll go back to the cutting table and prep the edge just like we did before. And for a project like this where you're making credit card slots, you may be wondering why I'm cutting so flush and close to the fabric. You don't really need to reinforce this on the ends, because it's either going to be folded down and top stitched or caught into another seam, because typically you're making more than just 1 credit card slot. So they're overlapping. So something else is usually going to be sewn to the sides of it. You're either flipping it, binding it, attaching it somehow, or it's typically going to have some type of perpendicular seam coming across the sides of it to further secure that, okay? But for now, we just trim it close to the edge. We're going to grab our glue again and prep it the same way we did the zigzag stitches. And for this, you're not going to be able to use the serger for that part, so you'll still have to go back and top stitch using thread in your regular sewing machine across the top to secure down that folded and finished edge. All right, and here you can see I've top stitched on the last option. So slightly different look, of course, because I had light and neutral thread in my serger for this one. The same thing would apply if you use a coordinating fabric or something that blends in to do the zigzag or overlock stitch on your sewing machine. And then, of course, if you want to add a little extra bulk and you want to have a fully finished credit card slot or pocket, then you can use that folded technique. So there you have it, 3 different ways to get the same or very similar results. I hope that you'll give that a try next time you're working on some type of project that requires some little credit card slots or kind of slip-in pockets like that. And that is exactly my style of teaching. Offer different options. I like to stay flexible and resourceful. We all want to make do with what we have accessible to us. So if you don't have any fancy machines, no worries. There's definitely some shortcuts and some roundabout ways that we can still get to the same results. Now, going forward with this new club that I'm in the process of working on, there's going to be a lot of things that may make you kind of shy away from trying out the club or working on these projects with us, right? Tricky stabilizers, maybe some finicky steps and corners and things that need to be turned out, hardware, stabilizers, no worries. If you're familiar with my teaching style, you know that I love to break that stuff down for you in a super easy to understand manner. And that is exactly what I plan to do with the different video lessons in this new club. Now, I'm also working on providing more value and more projects. So in the past, we've done 5 different handbags for each club. This time, I'm thinking I found some really great projects that I think I'm going to put into this, and I'm thinking I want to go with 7 projects to offer more bang for your buck and teach you more different types of projects to make. That way you'll have a longer list of projects to pick from when you need to make one for yourself or to give as a gift to someone that you love. I'm still wanting to teach the 7 projects over a 5-month period, so that means you're going to get a bonus in 1 month and you're going to get 3 projects in 1 month. They're gonna start off like a smaller one, a medium one, and then a more intricate one, all in that same month. So that'll give you a really good time to kind of step your skills and your game up in these wallet making projects that we're gonna be featuring every single month. First month, we'll just start off with one to kind of ease into the whole process and get a footing on exactly what it takes to make a really nice wallet, and then we'll bump up from there. But I think it's gonna be a really good one, and I hope that you'll stick around to learn more details. For now, go ahead and leave me a comment below and let me know what types of wallets, like what wallet style would you like to see featured in my new Wallet of the Month Club. I definitely love to give a lot of value, a big bang for your buck, and to offer different styles, right? Not everybody wants the same exact wallet. And I think with 7 projects, I'm definitely gonna feature a ton of variety in the one Wallet of the Month Club. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to check your email tomorrow because I'm gonna be coming to you with another video with more details on this new club. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.